Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The crystal chandeliers sparkled in the grand ballroom of the Grand Regency Hotel in Dallas, casting reflections across the gold-plated walls and gleaming marble floors. The soft strains of violins mingled with the lively chatter of hundreds of guests, all dressed in their finest to witness the grand moment between Laura and James. Laura, 28, stood before the mirror in the bridal suite, her hands trembling as she adjusted the delicate white veil. The satin silk wedding gown hugged her figure, accentuating the elegance of a talented interior designer who had spent months personally planning every detail of this wedding day. She offered herself a small smile in the mirror, trying to shake off the vague sense of unease that had haunted her all week. "Laura, you look stunning," whispered Claire, her best friend and maid of honor, her eyes shimmering, but something in Claire's smile felt strained, as if she were hiding a secret. Laura brushed the thought aside, convincing herself it was just pre-wedding nerves. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the room, ready to face the future. The wedding hall bloomed with white roses and glowed with soft candlelight. Guests rose to their feet, all eyes turning to Laura as she walked slowly down the red carpet aisle. At the far end stood James, her fiancé, striking in a tailored black suit. He was the son of a powerful politician, a man she had loved for 2 years, though sometimes she questioned whether their love was truly deep or just perfectly aligned on paper. But today, she chose to believe in love. As Laura drew closer, the smile on James's face faded. He stepped forward and raised a hand to signal the orchestra to stop. The violins fell silent, and a heavy hush descended over the room. Laura felt her heart pound wildly, threatening to break through her chest. "James," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Laura," James said, his voice cold, void of emotion. "I'm sorry. I can't do this." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Laura froze, her mind blank. "I don't want to get married. Not to you. I've changed my mind." He turned and walked away, leaving Laura standing alone under the harsh gaze of hundreds of shocked, curious, and pitying eyes. The whispers escalated into noise. Camera flashes from the press began to explode around her, the white-hot lights cutting into Laura's dignity like knives. "Runaway bride," someone shouted from the crowd, and phones were raised to capture the most humiliating moment of her life. Claire rushed over, trying to pull Laura out of the spotlight. But Laura pushed her away. "Don't," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I don't need pity." Laura turned, her wedding dress trailing behind like a ghost. She didn't run. She didn't cry. Not yet. She walked straight through the emergency exit at the edge of the hall, leaving behind the noise and the lights. Outside, the Dallas air was stifling, but she didn't stop. She climbed into the waiting taxi, not caring that her gown got caught in the car door. "Get me out of here," she told the driver, her voice choked. "Anywhere." Just hours later, the scandal had exploded across the news. Politician's son abandons bride at the altar. Cruel headlines called Laura a pitiful victim, or worse, a failed gold digger. Friends she once trusted began to pull away, some even publicly criticizing her on social media. Clients canceled contracts, claiming they didn't want to be associated with someone tainted by scandal. The interior design career Laura had spent years building suddenly crumbled beneath her. She couldn't stay in Dallas a moment longer. With a small suitcase packed with a few changes of clothes and still wearing her wedding gown, Laura boarded a midnight train out of the city. She had no plan, no destination in mind, only the need to find a place where no one knew her, where no one would look at her with pity. The train carried her to Wyoming, a remote, rugged land of rolling mountains and open skies that seemed to promise a new beginning. The Wyoming train station was tiny, just a crooked tin roof and a few old wooden benches. It was well past midnight, and not a soul was in sight. Laura sat down, her wedding dress now dusty and wrinkled, her heels kicked off beside her. She looked up at the sky, where the stars sparkled like they were whispering words of comfort, but it wasn't enough to ease the ache in her chest. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold back the tears. "What did I do wrong?" she whispered. She had given James her whole heart, planned a future she thought they'd share. She had dreamed of a warm home, of design projects completed with a smile, and now all of it had turned to ash. She thought of her mother, who always pressured her to marry the right man, and felt a surge of anger rise within her. "No," she said softly to herself. "I won't let this define me." Under the starlight, Laura stood and wiped her tears. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she couldn't go back. Dallas, James, and all those broken dreams, they had to be left behind. She grabbed her suitcase and stepped out of the station, ready to face whatever came next. Wyoming, though wild and unfamiliar, was a chance to find herself again. In that moment, Laura, the abandoned bride, began her journey toward becoming stronger than she had ever been. The sound of an engine broke the stillness of the night. A sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the train station, its headlights cutting through the darkness, making Laura squint. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a dark gray suit, his stride confident but not arrogant. Under the dim glow of the street lamp, his features were sharp, his deep brown eyes locking onto Laura's, as if he had known her for a long time. Laura tightened her grip on her suitcase, her instincts on high alert. "You're Laura Bennett, aren't you?" His voice was deep, clear, and unwavering. Laura frowned, startled that someone would call her by name in such a desolate place. "I'm Luke Harrison," he continued, not waiting for her response. "I saw you on the news tonight. The abandoned bride in Dallas. Quite the spectacle." Laura stiffened, shame washing over her again like a fresh wound. "What do you want?" she asked coldly, masking the tremor in her voice. The last thing she needed was another gawker or a tabloid reporter. Luke stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm not here to mock you," he said, pulling a phone from his coat pocket and scrolling quickly. He held the screen up to her, showing a headline. "Abandoned bride. Wedding scandal in Dallas. You're running away. I can help you, but I need something from you, too." Laura sprang to her feet, her wedding gown disheveled, hair a tangled mess. "I don't need your pity or anyone else's," she snapped. "If you're just here to gloat, then please leave." Luke remained unfazed. He crossed his arms, his expression calm but piercing. "I don't pity you. I need a wife on paper only to resolve a legal matter regarding my family's land. The contract lasts 6 months, no more. In return, I'll give you a place to stay. Somewhere, no one knows your name. You need a roof, Laura. I need a wife. We both get something out of it." His proposal hit like a slap, not because it was offensive, but because of how coldly direct it was. Laura stared at Luke, trying to detect a trace of mockery or a hidden agenda, but his face was blank, purely pragmatic. "You're talking about a fake marriage?" she asked, her voice low, part skeptical, part intrigued. "Exactly," Luke replied. "A clear contract. You'll live on my ranch in Wyoming. Act as my legal wife. I'll provide financial support, housing, and privacy. After 6 months, we part ways. No strings, no emotions." Laura let out a dry laugh, a bitter sound that echoed in the night. "You think I'm desperate enough to agree to be someone's fake wife just hours after being left at the altar?" Luke tilted his head slightly, a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "I think you're smart enough to recognize an opportunity when it's in front of you. You have nowhere to go, Laura. Dallas isn't your home anymore. I'm offering a way out." She wanted to argue, to tell him to go to hell, but his words struck a painful truth. She had nothing left in Dallas, no friends, no career, not even her dignity. Wyoming was unfamiliar, but maybe that was exactly what she needed, a place to rebuild. Laura took a deep breath and met Luke's gaze. "If I agree, I want to see the contract, and I want my own terms." Luke gave a faint smile, the first sign of emotion on his face. "You're tougher than I expected." "Good. I prefer working with people who know what they want." He opened the SUV's rear door, gesturing for her to get in. "Come on, we'll go over the details at my office." He pulled out his phone and called his lawyer. The drive took them to a small but modern building in a nearby town, where Luke maintained a temporary office. Inside, warm light from a desk lamp lit up shelves of books and a large table where a contract was already prepared. Laura sat down, her dress dusty from the road, but her eyes sharp and focused. Luke's lawyer arrived and handed her the contract. She read every line, every clause, with the scrutiny of a designer inspecting blueprints. The agreement was clear. Laura would play the role of Luke Harrison's wife for 6 months, attend public events as needed, and stay out of his personal affairs. In return, she would receive a financial settlement sufficient to start over after the contract ended, as well as housing and protection from the media. But the final clause made her pause. "No emotional involvement between parties allowed." "This needs to change," Laura said, tapping her finger on the table. "I want to add a clause. I'm free to use my time at the ranch as I see fit, as long as it doesn't interfere with my role. I won't be a puppet." Luke raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her assertiveness. "You want freedom? Fine. But understand this. My ranch has rules. You'll be expected to follow them." "I will," Laura replied, eyes locked with his. "But I'm not your employee. I'm a partner in this deal." After a brief silence, Luke nodded. "All right, I'll add the clause." He revised the document on his laptop, printed a new copy, and slid it across the table along with a pen. "Sign it, Laura Bennett." From now on, you're my wife on paper." Laura picked up the pen, her hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the decision. She signed her name, each stroke a declaration that she would no longer let her past define her. When she was done, Luke extended his hand. "Welcome to Wyoming, Mrs. Harrison." She shook his hand, feeling the strength and cool control in his grip. But in Luke's eyes, Laura caught a flicker of something else, perhaps curiosity or something deeper he wasn't ready to show. She wasn't sure, but she knew one thing. This was her first step toward taking back her life. Luke Harrison's SUV glided along winding red dirt roads, leading Laura deep into the Wyoming mountains. The early morning light filtered across endless fields of grass, where the towering peaks shimmered faintly through wisps of mist. Sitting in the back seat, Laura wore a simple sweater and jeans from her suitcase, having changed out of the wedding dress, but she still felt out of place, like she was stepping into a world that wasn't hers. The marriage contract she'd signed just hours ago still clung to her mind, a reminder that she wasn't truly Mrs. Harrison, only a component of a transaction. The vehicle stopped in front of tall iron gates, opening to reveal a sprawling estate. The ranch was modern, almost too modern for the wild surroundings. The main house was made of wood and glass, with clean architectural lines that looked more like an award-winning design than a home. Surrounding it were stables, a greenhouse, and neatly kept fields, all pristine but oddly lifeless. Laura stepped out, inhaling the crisp mountain air, trying to shake her unease. Luke led her inside, his strides brisk, his demeanor impersonal. "Sophia will show you to your room," he said, tone flat as if reading a report. "You can move freely around the house, but stay out of my office. Dinner's at 7. Be on time." No smile, no welcome. Laura nodded silently, but irritation flared inside her. She wasn't his employee. From the hallway emerged a petite woman with neatly tied salt and pepper hair. "I'm Sophia," she said warmly, her voice a stark contrast to Luke's chill. "Welcome to Harrison Ranch. Miss Laura, don't let Mr. Luke scare you. He's just not great with people." Her sincere smile made Laura smile back almost involuntarily. Sophia led her upstairs to a spacious room with large windows overlooking the mountains. The furnishings were simple wooden bed, wardrobe, a small writing desk, but everything was clean and functional. "This will be your room," Sophia said, placing a reassuring hand on Laura's shoulder. "If you need anything, I'm always in the kitchen downstairs." Laura nodded, feeling like she'd found an unexpected ally. After Sophia left, Laura unpacked the few clothes she had and stood by the window, gazing out at the ranch. The glass walls of the house reflected the sunlight, but couldn't hide the coldness inside. As an interior designer, Laura had a keen sensitivity to space. This house had potential modern lines, open design, but it lacked warmth. It lacked soul, and that thought sparked something in her. A vague but growing idea that maybe, just maybe, she could change that. If only to remind herself that she still existed beyond being someone's fake wife. That afternoon, Laura explored the ranch. She walked through a small garden where wildflowers grew in disorganized clusters, then peeked into the greenhouse, where the plants were well tended but lacked creative flair. The stables were nearly empty, housing only a few horses cared for by a tall, sun-bronzed man with a friendly smile. "I'm Diego. Security around here," he said, shaking her hand. "You're the first person Luke's brought here in years. Welcome, Senora Harrison." He winked. Laura offered a faint smile in return, still getting used to the new title. Diego told her about the ranch, how Luke had turned it from barren land into a high-value property while keeping it isolated from the outside world. "He likes his privacy," Diego said, voice lowering, "but sometimes I think he's lonelier than he admits." Laura didn't respond, but the words lingered in her mind. Luke Harrison, this cold, sharp-eyed man, what was he hiding beneath that fortress-like exterior? At 7 sharp, Laura entered the large dining room, where a long wooden table was set simply but elegantly. Luke was already seated at the head of the table, skimming through a file without looking up as she entered. Sophia brought in roast beef and potatoes, smiling at Laura before retreating to the kitchen. Laura sat down, feeling more like she was at a board meeting than a family dinner. "Are you settled in?" Luke asked, voice flat, eyes still on the document. "I am," Laura replied calmly, "but I have a few questions. What exactly am I supposed to do here? I mean, besides playing your wife?" Luke finally looked up, his gaze sharp, as if measuring her. "Do whatever you like, as long as you don't interfere with me. The contract's clear. Show up when I need you. Stay quiet when I don't. Simple." Laura clenched her fork. Being treated like a tool was getting under her skin. "I'm not your employee, Luke. I agreed to be a partner in this arrangement, not a puppet." If I'm here, I want purpose. He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing his face, before quickly vanishing. Purpose? He repeated with a touch of sarcasm. What do you want? Redecorate my house? Open a boutique in the mountains? Maybe both, Laura replied without flinching. This place is beautiful, but it's not a home. It feels like a showroom. I could help change that. Luke put down the file for the first time, giving her his full attention. You think you can do something with a house that doesn't belong to you? I'm an interior designer, Laura said firmly. I know how to turn a space into a home. If you'll allow it, I'd like to start with the kitchen. It needs warmth. Luke was quiet for a moment, studying her as though deciding whether this was a challenge or an offer. Finally, he nodded. Do what you want. Just don't expect me to be involved. Laura gave a faint smile, her first real sense of control. I don't need you to be. Just don't get in my way. After dinner, Sophia pulled Laura aside, her eyes sparkling. You did well, dear, she whispered. Luke's not used to being challenged, but I saw the way he looked at you. Something's different. He doesn't open up easily, but keep being yourself. He needs that more than he knows. Laura nodded, Sophia's words igniting a spark of curiosity. Who was Luke really, beneath all that coldness and formality? Why did a man like him need a fake marriage in the first place? Back in her room, Laura stood by the window. The mountains bathed in silver moonlight. A new determination settled in her chest. She wasn't here just to survive. She would leave her mark. Morning sunlight streamed through the large glass windows of the Harrison Ranch kitchen, casting a warm glow over a space that still felt cold. The stainless steel cabinets gleamed, the black granite countertops pristine. Everything perfect, yet soulless, like a painting that hadn't been colored in. Laura stood in the center of the room, holding a cup of coffee, her eyes scanning every corner. After 3 days at the ranch, she had made a decision. She wouldn't just be a ghost in this house. She wouldn't just play the part of a hired wife. As the contract with Luke Harrison dictated, she was Laura Bennett, an interior designer, and if she had to stay here for 6 months, she would leave her mark. Setting the coffee down, she pulled out an old sketchbook from her suitcase, where she kept all her design ideas, and began scribbling notes. Soft beige curtains to soften the light, a hand-woven rug for warmth, a few potted plants to bring life into the space. This kitchen, she thought, should be the heart of the home. Not just a place to cook. She thought back to her days in Dallas, transforming tiny apartments into cozy havens for clients. If she could do that for others, she could do it for herself, and for this ranch. Sophia, the kind-hearted housekeeper, entered, carrying a basket of fresh vegetables from the garden. You're up early, Miss Laura, she said with a smile that brightened the room. Need any help? Laura smiled back and pointed at her sketchbook. I want to warm up this kitchen, Sophia. It feels sterile. I think we can make it a place where people actually want to gather. What do you think? Sophia tilted her head, looked around, and then nodded emphatically. I agree, Mr. Luke never pays attention to things like this. As long as it's clean and working, that's all he cares about. But I know he'd like it, though he'll never admit it. She winked, making Laura laugh. The two spent the entire day working together. Laura rearranged the open shelves, placing jars of herbs and spices where they were visible, adding a touch of charm. She found some old cotton fabric in the storage room and stitched together makeshift curtains to soften the sunlight. A small wooden table was pulled to the center of the kitchen, covered with a cream-colored cloth, and a vase of wildflowers from the garden served as the centerpiece. Laura even borrowed a few tools from Diego, the ranch's security guard, to build a small wooden shelf for Sophia's cookbooks. By afternoon, Laura decided to prepare a special dinner. She made homemade pasta with fresh tomato sauce, a green salad, and garlic bread. The aroma of herbs and simmering tomatoes wafted through the kitchen, stopping Diego mid-step as he passed by. Madre mia, Miss Laura, you've turned this place into a restaurant, he laughed, making Laura blush. Sophia laid a hand on her shoulder, her eyes glistening. You remind me of my mother. She used to say, the kitchen is the soul of the home. You're bringing that soul back, my dear. Laura smiled, warmth rising in her chest. Once she had dreamed of a home with James, but now she was building something new, even if temporary. This isn't my home, she reminded herself, but I can make it feel like one, at least for 6 months. At 7 sharp, Luke entered the dining room as usual, with his signature frown and a stack of documents in hand. But this time, he paused at the threshold. His eyes swept across the kitchen. The new curtains softened the light. The small table with its wildflower centerpiece added intimacy, and the smell of dinner lingered in the air. warm and inviting. He said nothing but sat down at the head of the table, and Laura noticed that he looked around longer than usual. Sophia and Diego joined for dinner, a rare occurrence in Laura's time at the ranch. The table buzzed with life as Diego shared funny stories about the horses, and Sophia reminisced about her early days on the ranch. Laura quietly observed, proud that the space she had created was bringing people together, but Luke remained distant, eating in silence, though his eyes occasionally drifted her way. After dinner, once Sophia and Diego had left, Luke stood and looked directly at Laura. "What did you do to the kitchen?" he asked, not accusatory, but edged with suspicion. "I didn't ask you to change anything." Laura stood tall, meeting his gaze without flinching. "You said I could use my time how I wanted. I'm an interior designer, Luke. I can't live in a place that has no soul. That kitchen, it needed warmth, and I think everyone here needed it, including you." Luke's brow furrowed. He clearly wasn't used to being talked back to. "This is my house, Laura, not your project." "Your house?" She shot back, her voice firm but calm. "It feels more like an office. You might be able to live like that, but I can't. If I have to be here, I'm going to make it livable." She paused, realizing she might have pushed too far, but she didn't take the words back. Luke stared at her, his expression unreadable, torn between irritation and something else. At last, he gave a small nod. "Do what you want, but don't expect me to thank you." He turned and walked out of the room. But Laura noticed, before disappearing through the door, he glanced back at the kitchen once more. Later, as Laura was washing dishes, Sophia came to her side, grinning. "You rattled him, you know," she said, chuckling. "He's not used to people standing their ground, but I saw how he looked at you. It was different. You're doing great, Laura. Don't stop now." Laura nodded, her hands still in the soapy water, but her heart lighter than it had been in days. She wasn't just changing the kitchen, she was reclaiming herself, and whether Luke Harrison admitted it or not, she knew he was paying attention. A small part of her wondered what he would do if she kept challenging him. That night, as she returned to her room and looked out at the quiet ranch under moonlight, Laura smiled to herself. It felt like she'd won a small battle. Wyoming, for all its wildness, was becoming a place where she could stand tall again. Morning sunlight blanketed the Harrison ranch in a peaceful glow, casting a soft light over the kitchen Laura had recently transformed. The beige curtains and vase of wildflowers brought warmth to the space. A small change, but one that made Laura feel like she was slowly reclaiming herself. Standing by the living room window, a cup of tea in hand, she looked out over the rolling fields and felt lighter than she had since arriving in Wyoming. The scandal in Dallas, where she'd been abandoned at the altar by James, still lingered like an old wound, but she was learning how to rise again. That peace, however, didn't last. The sound of an approaching engine broke the quiet, coming from the dirt road leading to the ranch. Laura frowned as a sleek black sedan pulled up to the iron gates. Diego, the ranch's guard, stepped out of the stables, eyes narrowing with alertness. As the gate opened, Laura's heart clenched. Stepping out of the car was none other than James, her ex-fiancé, in a deep navy suit, hair perfectly combed, and wearing that same arrogant smirk she knew too well. Beside him was a middle-aged man in glasses, holding a briefcase. Clearly a lawyer. But what stunned Laura more than anything was the look in James's eyes, not just aimed at her, but burning with hostility. As if he had come to claim something far greater than just a person. Laura tightened her grip on the teacup, forcing down the surge of anger. She never expected James to track her to Wyoming, a place she thought she'd finally escaped him. The doorbell rang, and Sophia, the housekeeper, emerged from the kitchen, her expression filled with concern. "Miss Laura, do you want me to call Mr. Luke?" she asked. Laura shook her head and stood tall. "No, Sophia, I'll handle it." She set the cup down, took a deep breath, and walked toward the front door. She was no longer the fragile bride from Dallas. Wyoming had given her ground to stand on, and she wasn't about to let James take that from her. At the gate, James leaned against the car, his gaze sweeping over her like she was just a small piece in a much larger game. "Laura," he said smoothly, voice dripping with mockery, "you ran off to become the wife of a man like Harrison. That's disappointing." Laura stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "What do you want, James?" "I'm not part of your life anymore." The man beside him finally spoke, voice flat and legalistic. "I'm Edward Vance, Mr. Caldwell's attorney. We're here to inform you that your marriage to Mr. Luke Harrison is invalid. You are still legally engaged to Mr. Caldwell under a contract that has not been formally dissolved. We request that you cease this conduct, or we will pursue legal action." Laura felt heat rise to her face. "Invalid?" she snapped. "You left me in front of hundreds of people, James. You think you still have any legal claim over me?" Before James could reply, a deep voice cut through the tension. "She doesn't belong to you, Caldwell, and neither does this land." Luke Harrison appeared from the house, calm in his posture, but with eyes like sharpened steel. He stood beside Laura, tall and unyielding, and Laura noticed something else in his gaze as he looked at James, not just anger, but familiarity. James smirked, a flash of triumph in his eyes. "Harrison, long time no see. Still clinging to this land? I thought you'd have learned your lesson after the last time we crossed paths." Laura turned to Luke, surprise flickering in her eyes. They knew each other. Luke didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on James. "The last time you tried to steal my Colorado project, Caldwell, you failed. This won't be any different." Laura's heart beat faster. Colorado a project. Luke had never mentioned this, but clearly there was a deeper rivalry at play. James stepped forward, still smiling. "This time is different. Laura is my fiancée, and your fake marriage won't cover up the fact that you're using her in a legal loophole to keep this property. Back down, or I'll take both of you down." The fire inside Laura surged past fear. She stepped in front of James, eyes blazing. "I am no longer your fiancée, James. I am Luke Harrison's legal wife." She reached out and grabbed Luke's hand, squeezing it, not just to prove a point, but to send a message. She wasn't the same girl he once abandoned. "You have no claim here. Leave." James froze, clearly stunned by her defiance. Luke, beside her, glanced at her with a flicker of surprise and something else, respect. He returned the hand squeeze, then looked back at James. "Your lawyer should check the paperwork again. Caldwell, our marriage is certified and legal, and if you think you can use the same tricks you tried in Colorado, you're mistaken. I beat you once. I'll do it again." Vance took a small step back, muttering something about needing further review. James, still trying to maintain his swagger, pointed a finger at Laura. "You'll regret this, Laura. And Harrison, you know I don't stop." With that, he turned and got back in the car, followed by his lawyer, leaving a trail of dust behind them on the dirt road. When the sedan disappeared from view, Laura realized she was still holding Luke's hand. She let go, face warming slightly, and turned away to mask her embarrassment. "Thank you," she said softly, but firmly. "And Colorado, what happened between you two?" Luke looked at her, his eyes now softer than usual. 3 years ago, the Caldwell family tried to undercut me on a massive real estate deal in Colorado. James led the charge: bribes, legal threats, dirty tactics. I won, but he never let it go. Now he's targeting this ranch, and you're just part of his leverage." He paused, then added in a lower voice, "But you handled that well, Laura. I didn't expect you to stand up to him like that." Laura gave a small, confident smile. "You don't know me very well yet, Luke, and if James wants to play dirty, I'm not letting you fight him alone." She turned and walked back into the house, leaving Luke standing there, watching her with new curiosity. That evening, in the living room, Sophia and Diego buzzed with excitement as they heard the story. "You shut him down," Diego laughed, slapping the table. Sophia clasped Laura's hands, her eyes gleaming. "You're stronger than you think, dear. And Mr. Luke saw it, too." Laura nodded, though her thoughts were spinning with everything she'd learned about Luke and James. A past rivalry, a battle unfinished. She looked out the window, moonlight glinting over the ranch. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was stepping into a bigger fight. And for the first time, she felt ready. Sunset cast a golden-orange glow across the Harrison ranch, blanketing the grassy fields and pine woods, with a brilliant light tinged by a strange sense of unease. Laura stood by the living room window, staring out toward the distant mountains, her heart still unsettled after that morning's confrontation with James. Grabbing Luke's hand and declaring herself his wife had made her feel stronger than ever. But it also left a lingering question. Who exactly was she in Luke Harrison's world? A fake wife? A contract partner? Or something beginning to drift beyond those boundaries? The sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hall. Diego, the ranch's security guard, pushed open the door, his tanned face tight with concern. "Miss Laura, can you get Mr. Luke? I found something near the west fence. Footprints. Someone's lurking in the woods." Laura nodded, her heartbeat quickening. She rushed upstairs and knocked on the door of Luke's office, where he often shut himself away after dinner. Luke opened the door, his eyes immediately sharp when he heard Diego's report. "Footprints, some broken branches, and tire marks," Diego said, his voice low and grim. "Not locals." Whoever it was knew how to avoid the cameras. Luke crossed his arms, his gaze darkening. "Caldwell," he muttered, his voice like ice. He didn't stop after this morning. He's trying to sabotage the land. And he knows our marriage is the key to me keeping it. Laura's brow furrowed, anxiety rising in her chest. Sabotage? What do you mean? Luke turned to her, and his eyes now held not just cold calculation, but a fierce resolve. This land's been in my family for generations. But there's an old legal clause that requires me to be married to retain ownership. James and his family are trying to challenge that, and they'll do anything to ruin it, even physical sabotage. Without another word, Luke left the office. Motioning for Laura and Diego to follow, we're stepping up security. Laura, you need to learn how to defend yourself. If something happens, I want you ready. Laura nodded, even as fear crept into her spine. She wasn't used to danger or violence, but she knew she couldn't be the weak link. At dusk, Luke brought Laura to an open stretch of land behind the stables, where he had set up a makeshift shooting range. A handgun rested on a wooden table beside a few boxes of ammunition. The setting sun cast a red tint over Luke's chiseled face, revealing the tension he usually masked behind composure. Have you ever fired a gun? He asked, his voice level, not cold, but serious. Laura shook her head, hands clasped tightly to hide the tremble. Never. But I want to learn. Luke nodded, handed her the gun, and began to guide her through the basics. How to grip it firmly. How to aim. When her stance wavered, he stepped in close, placing his hand over hers to adjust her form. His touch was steady, warm. So unlike his usual clipped demeanor. Hold it steady, but don't lock up, he said.